Commander Shepard has been recovered. The Lazarus Project will proceed as planned.
Welcome to the Lazarus Project podcast, a Mass Effect podcast discussing its characters, lore, theory, and opinion. In this episode, we're chatting with Carla Elizabeth, what her experience with Mass Effect has been, how she got interested in Mass Effect, and just posing any and all questions to her. Joining, as always, is my co-host Tim.
Hello.
And, of course, joining us is our guest today, Carla.
Hello, everybody.
Yeah, thank you so much for taking your time out to join us today.
Yeah, no, I'm
you so
happy
much.
to come and talk about Mass Effect too. I haven't been. It's hard to focus on Mass Effect right now with like so much Dragon Age stuff. So, I'm very happy to talk about it because I'm working on a few videos, but Dragon Age is kind of taking the reins right now.
This was very, very conveniently timed, wasn't it? Like,
Very
literally
convenient,
that
yes.
information came out yesterday. Like, yeah.
Yeah, major news yesterday.
Can I ask what you thought of the title, or did you say?
I think, and I said this on Twitter, but my stance is basically if the devs want it, then I am all for it. I think BioWare has really been through such a tumultuous time lately, especially from the perspective of the devs having to deal with multiple layoffs, watching their, coworkers being laid off. There is, the lawsuit of the most recent laid off devs and, having to watch all the cuts through EA. So my stance is basically like, if the devs say that this is what they want and EA let them have it, then I'm all for it. I think that Dragon Age Veilguard sounds better, but if they want the, then whatever. I probably won't say the just because Veilguard's easier and that way I can just call it DAV. But I do prefer Dreadwolf. I still think that is the catchier name, but at the same time, like, that is a major spoiler. And if anything, I wish that hadn't have been the name from the very beginning. And like the very beginning, 2 years ago when they announced it, I would have preferred if it was the Veilguard back then, just so people wouldn't be spoiled if they haven't played Inquisition or Trespasser or whatever. But again, if that's what the devs want, if that's what they think better reflects their narrative and their vision, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, it did sound like it was going to be a direct sequel to Inquisition, which is something they haven't really done with Dragon Age before. So each
Yeah,
game's
and
like
I think that's kind of a, exactly, like Dragon Age has never had a actual sequel. Like the stories are connected, but it's still its own unique story. So yeah, the Dreadwolf title was pretty unique and had some major implications. And I do think in a way it kind of, I don't want to say was like gatekeeping, but it did kind of make people feel like if they hadn't played Inquisition, then they can't play Dreadwolf. So it was kind of setting up people to not be as inclined to try it out. So I totally understand the name change. I just wish there wasn't a the. That's my main criticism.
Yeah, Dragon Age Inquisition was never Dragon Age the Inquisition. I don't know.
Yeah, I wish
suppose
they
we
would
don't
have
know.
kept like some consistency in the naming convention, but then again, like Dragon Age is such a weird series because there's very few things that are the same throughout the series. Like the combat changes every game. The only thing that's really consistent in the Dragon Age games is that you play a new protagonist every time and you get a set of companions. And that's basically it. Everything is different through every game. So on one hand, I wish they would have just kept a similar naming convention. But on the other hand, it's very on brand for Dragon Age to do something that the other ones have not done before.
So, let's just we'll go back a bit. We're talking a lot of stuff that's happened now, but you've not always been, you're quite a successful YouTuber at the moment. But it's not where you started, though, is it? You used to do, well, I mean, I think you still do like pins and little drawings and artwork and that sort of stuff. Is that how you got started in like the Mass Effect community and like the Dragon Age artwork, that kind of era?
Yeah, I've been a freelance illustrator for a while, which I still do. I still make my pins and my stickers, and like I still run my like small business. And 2 years ago, and actually my business started because of Dragon Age. Um it's been almost 3 years now, but I decided to design an enamel pin of Solus from Dragon Age Inquisition, and then that like started it. And then when I was playing Dragon Age, Jay, the previous community manager, you know, who I'm very sad that he's not at BioWare anymore. Um he he had seen me, ranting and raving about BioWare on Twitter and was like, "Hey, you should play Mass Effect. If you really like Dragon Age, you should play Mass Effect." And I was like, "I don't really like shooters." I had played Halo and Call of Duty when I was younger. And I was like, I just don't think that's for me. The game kind of looks like it's for guys. Like it looks like a very like masculine kind of like shooter war. Like the marketing for it was not pulling me in. But I hadn't seen like the Legendary Edition stuff yet. And he was like, "No, you really, really got to play it. I think you'd really like it." And I was like, "All right." And that's really what brought me into Mass Effect. And then actually like 2 months before I started my like actual YouTube, I had started compiling a bunch of clips of FemShep in Renegade, because I think those like Jennifer Hill's line delivery is just so good as Renegade. So I had started clipping them and like compiling them, and I had put up a video just for like shits and giggles. And then people were like, "Oh, you should make some Mass Effect videos." And I was like, "Oh, why not? Sure." And that's kind of how I got here. And Jay also helped me with that as well. He gave me some information because he had saw that I had like posted on Twitter, and he was like, "Hey, if you want some feedback on like your sound," um so he like looked at my Adobe whatever stuff. And yeah, I kind of owe a lot of my Mass Effect stuff to him, because he's the one who really pushed me and really convinced me. Like he really had to convince me, because I was like, no, I don't think I'll like it." And now here I am. Here I am. What? It's been 3 years now. Yeah, 3 years since Legendary Edition. Yeah. Um, and now it's like all that I think about. So thanks,
Yeah.
Jay.
Yeah, I mean, your videos are absolutely spot on. And for anybody listening that hasn't seen Carla's videos, make sure there'll be links in that description for you. So yeah, if you're muted there, Craig. Craig, oh, he's gone.
Oh, well, rest in peace.
But yeah, I mean, like your videos are absolutely spot on. You've got so much information in there. Like I've seen on the Twitter and that you said, "Oh, I sat down to make a 5-minute video and it's been 30 minutes long." So
it happens every time. I'm a yapper, and I don't mean to be. And every time I'm editing a script, I'm like, I could cut that. And I'm like, nope, I'm just yapping. Whatever. If they don't want to listen to it, they can just click off.
Okay. I just pretend that didn't happen.
if you had to pick one between, because obviously you started with Dragon Age and then you've moved on to your Mass Effect, and obviously you're expanding that now as well. We've got Exodus, and I think you've done quite a bit on the Cyberpunk as well. Out of all the games that you've covered, which is your favorite?
Oh god, that's a hard question. Mass Effect is the series that has changed my life in a lot of ways, some that I can't even say yet. And it had such a profound, like, Shepard's story and, like, Liara. They just have impacted me so much. But Dragon Age Inquisition was, like, it changed my life. The way that I approach video games, like, the way that it was my first BioWare game, and, spoilers, but there's a romance, and I'll be vague, so it's not like 100% spoilers, but, there's a romance who breaks up with you, and you can't do anything about it. And it was like it was so weird and, like, devastating at the same. I was like, "Am I crying over this pixelated man?" And my partner came home and he was like, "Are you okay?" I was like, "He just broke up with me." And my partner was like, okay. So let's put the video game down." Um, but I think that Dragon Age is just so special to me because of the people that I've met because of it, the things that I've experienced because of it, and I can't, like, it had such a domino effect on my life. Also, when are you posting this video?
Yeah, Craig's the editor.
Yeah, it should be like 2 or 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks.
Okay,
time.
so then I can tell you then, because I'm allowed to reveal something on the 9th. So I will tell you guys now, and you cannot tell anybody. But I was on the Dragon Age Community Council. So
Nice.
I've been working with BioWare for a few years on the Veilguard. And I can't reveal any information about it, but it changed my life. It really changed my life. And so because of that, also, if anyone from BioWare hears this, I only told them on the 7th, okay? Please don't get mad.
We can cut it out. It's not a problem.
So I think it's Dragon Age, but, like, Mass Effect, like, Dragon Age as a whole is my favorite, but Mass Effect Shepard is my favorite. It's hard. The series are very different, but yeah, it's a hard question. But Dragon Age changed my life, literally.
I did find it kind of interesting. I know my screen must have been doing all sorts of things when you were talking about this, but I did hear you. When you were saying about how you thought or you saw Mass Effect as like this sort of macho masculine thing initially. And to be fair, like it is a shame that like that kind of is reflected in like the marketing constantly, like in Mass Effect 1, 2, and 3. And I think to a degree it was in Andromeda as well. And I do think it's very nice that at least in the next Mass Effect they are showing more of a, like, this isn't just a guy's thing now, you know, like there is a following, like a quite a large following, you know, for Jennifer Hale and her portrayal of Shepard, and it's nice to see that there's a change sort of thing.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that they used a lot of FemShep stuff for marketing Legendary Edition, because I did go back and watch a lot of the original marketing for Mass Effect, and there's no way in hell I would have played those games. Like, I remember when I was younger, I had a brief period where I played Gears of War, but it was just because of, like, someone I was dating at the time. And I was like, there is no way me back then would have ever played this game after watching the marketing. And it's like, oh, you want to be a man in a war with aliens? Like, that is the impression. And not to say that that's bad marketing, because those are very much of the time. And you know, I still love the trailers. I think they're great, but they are dated. And I'm glad that Legendary Edition and what they're doing now with Mass Effect 5, it doesn't feel like it's geared towards anyone. I guess you could say that the new N7 figure obviously has a feminine figure and is probably a woman, but even still, it's not like that's such an like an offhanded aspect of the character that they showed that it doesn't really feel like the gender is important either way. So that I'm kind of glad to see that really changed, and I'm glad to see that they're kind of moving towards focusing on femshep a lot, like you said. And I know a lot of women and a lot of queer people who play Mass Effect. I was actually really surprised. But then again, there's so much overlap from the Dragon Age community, which is very heavy with women and queer people. Um, so ultimately, I'm like not that surprised. But I'm glad to see that it's widening and the marketing that they're, you know, the demographics that they're marketing to seem to be expanding. I think that's a very good thing.
I have questions about this council thing, but I don't know if you can answer them.
I can't answer. I can't answer anything.
Okay.
We're just allowed to reveal it on the 9th, and then I can just say I've done it for a few years. And that's all that I can say for now. I will probably be talking more about it when we're able to. If we're able to, I have no idea. So yeah, I'm sorry I can't answer your question.
No worries.
Bioware's gonna break down my door like right now and come and beat me up.
Does Mass Effect have like a council thing then? Do you think you'll be, obviously if you've done work with them for Dragon Age?
I honestly have no idea. But the Legendary Edition did. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but the Legendary Edition did have a community council. And that was revealed that like this is not new information that I'm providing here. That was revealed when the game launched. So I have no like I genuinely do not know, but I assume so.
Can I ask if you've read all of the comics?
Oh yeah. I've read all the comics and books and watched the terrible anime. Yeah, I've seen all the things.
So you weren't a fan of the Vega story?
In the comic or the anime?
The anime, like.
You know, I thought that anime actually did a pretty good job adding some stuff to his character that made me like him more. But the anime was so ugly. I really hate being this critical of like other people's work because I usually try not to be negative. But that anime is really, really bad looking. Like it's and it's the major thing that like really turned me off on it. So it's real like I don't watch it and I'm like, "Oh my gosh, this is really great." I'm like, "This is really hard to watch." I think if they would have gone with a different studio, like, you know, Studio Trigger did the Cyberpunk Edge Runners anime, and that anime looked very good and pulled in a huge demographic.
Oh yeah. Was
so it's
Edge Runners what? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just wondering, was Edge Runners what brought you to Cyberpunk? Because I know you quite recently got into that, didn't you?
No, I watched Edge Runners after finishing Cyberpunk, but I did finish Cyberpunk in like I think like I'd put 100 hours in 2 weeks, so I finished it very quickly and then watched Edge Runners right after and then started a new playthrough. But that anime was like really, really good. It did a good job of like bringing in a new demographic while also providing something to the existing fan base. And the Mass Effect anime just did not. It did not do that. It was just bad looking. And if you make something that's not visually appealing, immediately you're losing like half of the people you could have pulled in with something that looked better. So it's kind of unfortunate. And hopefully they learn their lesson from that. But yeah, I actually really like Vega's story in that, and I also like his story in the comics too.
Yeah, I mean, the whole sort of situation he gets put in at the end is like really dramatic, and I was quite surprised that they went there in how dark it was. But you're completely right that it does. The animation style, to me as well, just sort of looks a bit rushed.
Yeah, some of the frames of the like Liara's face just looks like a blob, and like arms look like noodles, and not a fan. Not a fan, but I do love that he references, like, he tells you about the story in that anime in the game. I thought that was pretty cool. And that's what I love so much about this expanded media that BioWare usually does, is that a lot of the time it will connect to the actual games, and it's like a little Easter egg for the hardcore fans who, consume everything.
Yeah,
The one thing that I don't like about Dragon Age comics, though, is they have their own canon.
Yeah, that's got to be hard for BioWare to navigate, because obviously in the comics, like, Alistair is king no matter what, and Fenris is alive, and there's a whole comic about him. So it does negate, if you made Alistair a warden, or if he sacrificed himself, to kill the archdemon. So I absolutely understand that criticism, but as someone who is not very good at role playing, I usually align my canon with BioWare's so that I can continue reading those without it deviating from my own canon. I know a lot of people are not like that. That's just like my personal thing. So like in my games, Alistair is king, Fenris is alive. Sebastian is like alive or whatever. I don't know. I don't really care about him, but so I usually follow what they're doing, so it's easier for me to read all that stuff.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what I'm currently doing in this. My current playthrough of Dragon Age is sticking to the BioWare canon, just so I can go through everything.
I don't know if either of you have have played/read the Life is Strange comics, or played Life is Strange. But one thing they did was they made a comic that was on an alternate ending that, to be quite honest, I don't know. I was going to make a point that it's an alternate ending to what you chose, but not everyone chose the same ending, so never mind. But
Yeah, I haven't. I haven't played that series anyways.
okay, that doesn't matter then.
But it, talking about that, what we were just talking about, that's going to be really interesting to see moving forward with Mass Effect, because Mass Effect 3 left so many choices that could be deviated. I'm really interested to see what any expanded media looks like following Mass Effect 3's ending.
I'm not sure if this is something I've said about before, but I do like the idea of, if they set a canon ending, then they explored through expanded media those alternate endings and what happens in those. Like, do like a comic series about synthesis, and a comic series about control. I think that could be quite interesting.
Multiverse kind of territory.
Yeah, I guess so.
Where's Atharia, Paragon 7? She's about to bust in here to talk about her multiverse theories. Yeah, no, I think that could be interesting. And I think that I still really don't know how I feel about BioWare choosing a canon moving into Mass Effect 5. But
What's your preferred ending?
Destroy. And I don't choose Destroy because I like it. I choose Destroy because my Shep is more important than the rest of the universe, so I want her to survive. I gotta have that little bit of like hope at the end, so I don't feel absolutely dead inside.
I can't do that after Rannoch though.
I know. I always feel so bad, and I think if they actually gave you a scene where like you saw Edie being, going out of commission or deactivated, and like you saw the Geth being deactivated or, losing their sentience, whatever, I would never pick that. Like if I had to face the choices that I made, but they don't make you do that. They're just
Hmm.
like, oh well, Joker's gonna walk out alone and he doesn't care where Edie is. He's like so unfazed that the way that it's framed, it basically lets you choose that without really feeling any repercussions, I guess.
I think they kind of copped out a little bit. Like they made, because I think they were undecided on if they wanted their ending to be bad or good. Like I think they did kind of try to hone in on like making it bittersweet, like regardless of what you chose. And I think that's kind of a problem. Like you say, you kind of need to confront. I don't know if that's what you're saying, confronting the consequences, because, like you say, I don't think you wanted to see Needy and the guest destroyed.
Yeah, I don't
So
want that, but because they don't show it, I can make that choice and not feel as bad. But if they like Legion is my favorite companion next to Liara. I love Legion. I think the Geth are amazing. They're such a cool concept, so underutilized. And if I had to watch the Destroy ending and there was an actual scene showing the destruction of the Geth, whatever that is supposed to look like, there's no way in hell I would choose it. But because they don't make you really look at any of the choices that you're making. It's, they're like, "Oh, well, here's Legion looking sad, but in that clip he's just looking down and he's alive in that clip." Like you don't Yeah, there's just and on one hand there's already so much emotional weight to the endings of Mass Effect 3 just with Shepard themselves. Maybe that's part of why they didn't address it, even though I really think the actual reason is time. Um,
mm,
but yeah, I think it's kind of a bummer that we never really saw the consequences of Shepard's choice there. But then at the same time, because they didn't clarify or solidify anything, that means that there's open room for Mass Effect 5. And I've already said a million times, like, the Geth can come back in a ton of ways. Like, I'm not concerned about them not being able to come back. It's extremely easy to bring them back.
oh, we know they're coming back though, don't we? From like the audio
Yeah,
files
yeah,
and
they're
things.
absolutely coming back, and I see people so, like, focused on how they're back, and I'm like, it's the easiest part of the story that they're telling. The Geth coming back is the Quarians reactivated them, or they saved their drive somewhere else, or like there's so much potential for them to have something already in the back of their mind. They were building all these weird things and looking into space, and we don't know what they were doing or what they're capable of. So, yeah, they're definitely coming back, which I'm very excited for. I know Tim thinks that they're like basically vacuums. So I'm very aware, but those are my little babies, okay? I saw that Geth with that like knight armor set on and I was like, that's my new hyperfixation right there.
Does it hurt you when you have to shoot a lot of them in Mass Effect 1?
Yeah, I actually do always feel bad in Mass Effect 1 because I'm like, if we could just talk for like a second, this would be cleared up immediately. Yeah, it makes me it makes me sad in Mass Effect 1.
My name is Scott Ryder, Tom Taylorson, calling in for the Andromeda Galaxy, and you are listening to the Lazarus Project podcast.
Who do you normally, throughout the Mass Effect series, who would be your go-to companions?
I always bring Liara all the time. I never leave without her in my party. Um, and if I could have Arya in my party at all times as well, I would, but obviously she can only be in the Omega DLC, which is a crime. She should be everywhere. Um, and then in Mass Effect 3, I basically always take Legion when I can, at the end there. Um, it's usually in order of my favorites. Liara, Arya, Legion, Garrus, Tally. and Rex. I don't care about the human companions. I don't need, they mean nothing to me. So they just stay on the ship.
I was just wondering, what could you say to Tim to convince him to finish Andromeda?
Okay. I've got something for you here because I've said this same spiel to several people. I know Andromeda is not a great game. I know it. But the story implications in like the last third of the game are genuinely so cool. All the stuff with the Jardan and like the stuff that you learn about the Angara, the Remnant, and all of the implications that all of that has. I know it'll be somehow relevant to the next game. I mean, we've already seen in Angara. If you want to be as prepared for Mass Effect 5 as you can be, you have to play Andromeda. Like, if you want to be able to go into Mass Effect 5 and be familiar with the Angara that we know for sure is coming back, but also possibly know more about the Scourge, know more about the Andromeda Initiative, and know more about the Jardan, which I think are going to be relevant to the next game, you have to play it. And I promise it is so worth it. Like that end of the game, I was like, and that's what kind of sucks about Andromeda is you have to get through so much. There's just so much. It's such a big game. The maps are huge. You have to do so much. And I 100% at Andromeda. So like I'm very familiar with the size. But like I said, if you want to be able to have the theories and the knowledge going into Mass Effect 5, you have to play Andromeda. They've made that very clear. Andromeda is gonna be included, and you can't be a Mass Effect creator talking about Mass Effect 5 without playing all the Mass Effect games.
It's fair.
So, you better get on it.
So little time.
I get it. It's really hard to play games that are that size. I'm trying to 100% Cyberpunk right now, and I'm like 30 hours in, and I've done like nothing. I'm like, I've literally done I'm 30 hours in, and I have barely scratched the surface of just the side content. Which I'm not mad about a lot of content, but yeah, it's hard to dedicate so much time, especially when you're not like super enjoying a game. I get it. Like that's how I felt about Andromeda. Like there was stuff that I really liked, but I think that once you can get invested in the story and really see the potential, and there's also like you're going to find so many things that connect to the original trilogy. Like there's a conversation with um oh gosh, I can't remember her name, but she's the museum curator. And Ryder asked, do you think any Angara could have been in the Milky Way? And she basically says, yeah, it's a possibility. Like they kind of talk about those type of things. So those are the things that I think are worth playing because it opens up whatever is going to happen with Mass Effect 5. I don't think Andromeda is going to be heavily involved in Mass Effect 5, but it will be relevant, especially with the Angara there. So you got to do it. And now I'm going to start pressuring you all the time. I'm going to message you like once a week. Did you finish Andromeda?
I'm not sure if you guys asked this when I kind of disappeared or talked about this. But did you talk about your favorite Dragon Age game?
My favorite Dragon Age game is Inquisition. Like hands down. I love Inquisition, and I don't really love like the open world and how much filler content that there is in that game, but the main story and Trespasser is one of the best narratives I've ever played. And I really, really fell in love with games because of that. I mean, I really love games since I played Final Fantasy X when I was younger, when I was a kid. And that was like I'd played games before that, but that was like the game I remember looking at my TV as a kid and being like, I want to make video games. And I don't think I really had experienced that level of story until I played Dragon Age Inquisition. Like I love that story. It's so good. It's so good. So that one's my favorite. I really like Dragon Age 2. And I like Dragon Age Origins story, but it has terrible combat and it's really clunky.
I was going
So
to ask, to be fair, it's because I found it interesting that it seems to be a pattern, and I don't know if it's just my experience, but there seems to be a lot of younger female gamers that prefer Inquisition, and then a lot of older male gamers that prefer Origins. So I find that kind of interesting, and I guess it's like you say, it's the combat as well. Like the combat's more welcoming in Inquisition.
oh yeah, Inquisition has button mashing if you want it to be. Like you can mindlessly play. I don't like Inquisition's combat. I actually use a mod to like remove it. I do not care about the combat. But it is very easy to get into if you don't play a lot of games or you know, like very simple combat. Whereas in Origins, that like kind of tactical, like queuing up abilities, I hate that shit. I hate it. But also I think another reason for that is Inquisition is very, very welcoming to female gamers. And the statistics have shown that to be true. You know, they used female the female inquisitor for a lot of marketing. They also have it's also the series most focus on romance. Um it it's very much it's I think Inquisition is kind of like it's almost like reading a book. I guess that's kind of how I experienced it, like the way that the narrative is and how easy it is to kind of get into. Um, and I think that's appealing to a wider range of people. And also, you know, there's a lot of inclusion of female characters. There's also, you know, characters like Krem with trans representation, and there's the queer romances. I mean, you have, you know, characters like Iron Bull, and I think that's really appealing to a lot of, you know, female and queer gamers, and that's been my experience too.
You've also played. I think you did quite a bit of Baldur's Gate 3, didn't you?
I did, yeah. And I loved Baldur's Gate 3, but I hated the combat. I used cheats to there's a pattern here. I hate combat.
To be fair, that's why I haven't finished that, because I'm stuck on a combat thing, and I'm like, I can't bother to try this for the 15th time to try and get through it.
Yeah, that's when I first started, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna play. I'm gonna try and learn this combat. Everybody says they really like it. And then there was one fight that I spent like I think in total from wiping and like having to do it over, it was like almost 2 or 3 hours. And I was like, no, I'm not doing this. So I just got a mod or it's like a cheat program. If you want it, I'll give you the information. But I would not have been able to finish that game without that. I do not enjoy like I'm not a strategic gamer. I do not care about strategy going into combat. I do not care about, you know, armor builds and spell combinations and the best stats. I do not care about any of that whatsoever. So, yeah.
With the level of role playing detail that game have, do you think it's going to ruin games like Dragon Age for the future? Is it going to not feel as up to that level, or do you think it's going to be completely different?
You know, that's a really good question, and it is something that I have kind of talked about in a few of my videos before, because I don't know if the fan base will give Dragon Age the room that it needs to be its own game. You know, gamers really like to compare their experiences to other things, and it's been so long since Inquisition came out that a lot of these RPG gamers are going to have Baldur's Gate as their latest comparison. And Baldur's Gate, I mean, the level of immersion was there, like the choices and the consequences and the romances, like it was all very, very good. but Dragon Age is not going to be Baldur's Gate. It's just not. And, Dragon Age has protagonists that are voiced, which is, has become a staple of these games, is that experience with your character. And so I just really hope that people give it the room that it needs to be, because I do think that while Baldur's Gate was absolutely amazing and deserved every single award, I just think that a lot of people will continuously compare every game to it. And that's you're kind of setting yourself up for failure. Like, the Veilguard is not going to be Baldur's Gate 4. Like, it's just not.
Yeah, and I think it has to be more about just the story itself rather than making every choice meaningful. I think it's that making every choice meaningful, isn't it? That's really hard to compete with.
Yeah. And the scope that Baldur's Gate 3 had, that game is insane. Like, you could play for hours and hours and you're still going to uncover something new. Like, you're still going to find something that you have not seen the consequence for. And that's amazing that they were able to do that. But Baldur's Gate 3 also had 3 years of early access where they were getting money from people who had purchased the game while it was still in active development. That is not how AAA games work anymore, or at all. So already you're having 3 years where Baldur's Gate 3 could take all of this fan feedback and change the game. And they did. They made so many changes from early access based on fan feedback. And you're not going to see that with, any other game, really. I can't think of any other games that have done 3 years of early access. You have to think that's so much money that brought the studio, that they brought in to continue molding, refining, adjusting, tweaking. And the game still has several bugs and, it's whatever. But the level of feedback that they were able to get to be able to make it what it is now is just, that's unmatched. And I don't think we'll see that again until maybe their next game. It's great, and I wish all studios could do something similar. I wish that was more common, but it's not.
Well, like you say, hopefully, like more studios can learn from it. Maybe not to the extent of, like you say, putting a game in early access, but just refining a game until it can be the best it can be.
Yeah, I think the major thing with Dragon Age is, this game has been in development for over 8 years. It's gone through several iterations, and in a way, they have had fan feedback because a lot of those iterations have been revealed behind the scenes or leaked, whatever. So I think that on top of that, and, fans' general criticisms from the previous games, I think that in a way that BioWare has had all this time to kind of see the major issues with Inquisition and Dragon Age 2 and Origins, to see what fans like and did not like, and be able to kind of refine that moving forward. And I think that will be reflected in the Veilguard. I'm assuming I'm allowed to say that I loved it, but I don't. God, please, BioWare, don't burn my house down. I swear. I'm just really excited for everybody to see it. I genuinely think that this is going to be BioWare's return to what people expect from them. And I've said a million times, and this is totally aside from my participation, but I want BioWare to succeed so badly, because not only have those devs been through so much, like I said at the beginning, watching their colleagues being laid off and the fear of being laid off themselves. Like, I genuinely cannot imagine what that's like. And that's not a BioWare specific thing either. That's a industry-wide issue right now. So I really want the studio to get a win. They have had such a rough, it's almost been 10 years since Inquisition. And that was their last really commercial success. Obviously Andromeda, even though I would give Andromeda a 7.5 out of 10. And I like, at the very least, it's like a 7. It's fine. It didn't deserve the hate that it got, but the internet will internet. But Anthem, that was an even worse launch. So I just really hope that I hope that they get a good. I want the devs to feel success. I want Patrick Weeks, who is now the lead writer, who also has written for all the Dragon Age and Mass Effect. I want them to feel that success again for the devs. And then also on top of that, I want them to succeed so that Mass Effect can get all the support from the studio. Like, I want Gamble and his team. I want Bayer to be like, wow, look how good the Veilguard was. Here, Gamble, here's a bunch of money. Hire whoever you want. And oh, stop. He's actually agreeing with me. I don't know if you guys heard my dog, but he's agreeing.
It's just so enthusiastic.
But yeah, I want them, it's so hard looking at the game industry right now, and like everybody is, God, every studio has had cuts and layoffs and cancellations and studio close. I mean, it's really sad to look at the game industry as it is right now. So I want them to succeed. I don't want BioWare to close, and I don't think any Mass Effect or Dragon Age fan should be wanting that either.
No, not at all. Do you think
yeah.
if everything rides on Dragon Age, then this is their kind of, it has to succeed sort of thing for BioWare to survive?
Yeah, I feel the same way. And that's a scary feeling going in, and I can't imagine what the devs are feeling. And that information about the devs being happy, that was not like public marketing. That was something that was said to Jeff Grubb, who was like an insider. So that is the truth of how they're feeling, because that's not like a statement from their general manager or anything like that. So I really just I just want the best for that team. There's some amazing people working on this game, and I cannot wait for everybody to see it. And I God, I hope it does well.
It does feel like they've been given the kind of control over their own marketing, though. They've been given that kind of freedom by EA, which I think is nice and reassuring. Like, they kind of can market on their own terms, it seems like.
Yeah, I mean, if they were allowed to change that name, that's huge. I imagine there must, like, I don't know, but I imagine there might have been pushback from, them, like, overhead, or that's just what I'm imagining. But if they were given the room and, to say, hey, we think this better reflects the game that we created and we want to change it. And, leadership was like, okay. Because I imagine that, like, I genuinely don't know, but I imagine that would cost money to change. They have to do the copyright, but then also they had to change the names on like the PlayStation Store and Steam for the, the wish list stuff that was already up there. And like, there's such like a domino effect of that, because they've been going by Dreadwolf for the last 2 years. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I really hope that they were given the room to create the game that they wanted. That's the most important thing to me.
Have you said what characters you'd like to come back?
I am such a diehard Solus fan that, like, it almost doesn't matter what the game is to me as long as I get to see him. Like, there's a million characters that I think, should come back or could come back, as is kind of the, par for the course with BioWare games. But also, it's been almost 10 years since Inquisition, and I think a lot of Dragon Age fans that are already established need to know that and this applies to Mass Effect too. This applies to Mass Effect 5 also. It's been so many years that their largest demographic that they're going to be wanting to appeal to and market to is new fans, not already established fans. And I've said this several times about Mass Effect 5. Like, all the stuff that we're seeing for N7 Day, the majority of fans are never going to see that. Like, that is a very niche, small portion of the community that is ever going to see that. Your average, run-of-the-mill person who buys their game from GameStop and goes home and plays it, never going to see what we see on N7 Day. They don't follow that, and that's like the majority of the player base. So I also think that we talk about Mass Effect 5 and all the possible returning characters and like the whole returning crew, and my mind is immediately like, I don't think they're going to do any of that. Because I think that they're going to want to kind of do a soft I don't want to say reboot, because that's not what I mean. But like a soft reestablishing of Mass Effect, a new protagonist, a new companion of, a group of companions, and bringing back a few characters, having some references to the previous games, but mostly being a new story that you don't have to have played all the other games for. I think that's just kind of the take that, and I'm not saying that as like that is just my personal opinion on how I expect it to be. So
You wait, you'll see an IGM review coming the
Oh
next
my
day
God.
that's like Carla
Oh my
Elizabeth
God.
confirms.
Well, I've actually been sent 3 articles in like the last 2 weeks, which has just been really funny. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say. We know like nothing about, Mass Effect 5 especially.
Yeah.
But I love when BioWare brings characters back. Obviously, we all do. I have a question for you guys.
Okay.
Are you guys planning on playing Veilguard or the Veilguard? And I've seen a lot of fans say that they're basically going to be looking at this to see for it to inform them about Mass Effect 5. Are you guys kind of feeling that sentiment too?
No, not really. I'm going to play it. I've played all the other Dragon Age games. Haven't finished Trespasser yet. But I am working towards it. I've got a game going.
Oh my God, you
towards
have
it.
to finish Trespasser. It's the best. It's the best.
I'm a little bit hooked on Thronebreaker at the minute, so I need to pull myself away from that and to get on with my Dragon Age game. But no, I'm not going to use it as a comparison for what to expect in Mass Effect, because they're two different franchises. Although the reports that were out yesterday did sound like your party, your Dragon Age party, is getting reduced down to just a 3-party like Mass Effect, as opposed to having the 4 companions. So I don't know if they're kind of just trying to streamline things a bit more. But in regards to like Dragon Age being, what to expect from Mass Effect, they are two different franchises and 2 different ways of like gameplay and storytelling. So no, I wouldn't use it as a comparison. I think they'll do their own thing for Mass Effect.
I'm going to play the game regardless. I'm going to play the Veilguard regardless, because I am. I think everyone who's a Dragon Age fan has been waiting a long enough time to play this. To not play it just seems like crazy to me. But yeah, I think just to, I guess, sort of balance the scales out, I think it would be hard not to see it as a comparison. Yes, the engine's going to be different, and potentially some of the team's going to be different, but I think it could be a measure of BioWare's workflow. And if they can get this game right, then that's fantastic. Over the moon, and so excited about the next Mass Effect. But if it doesn't meet certain expectations, and I'm not going to have record high expectations, I know how much they've had to go through. but if it doesn't meet certain requirements or certain expectations, then it's going to be hard to see how Mass Effect's going to do in terms of its quality, because I mean, essentially Mass Effect was the last one that had a game come out, wasn't it? Andromeda came out after Inquisition.
Yeah, Andromeda came out in 2017 and Inquisition came out in 2014.
Yeah. So, I mean, Mass Effect having had essentially, well, I say less time, but I think it will equate to being about the same time, really. So it would make me question, I suppose, like what they can do with Mass Effect in the given time as well. So that's the only thing with me, but I have high hopes for the Veilguard.
Yeah, I think we know that based on the articles that Bioware put out a while ago that a lot of the Mass Effect team moved over to help finish Dreadwolf. And just yesterday, Michael Tucker liked a tweet where someone asked him if he contributed to it, and he doesn't really like a lot of stuff, on Twitter. And then obviously Gamble's been promoting it and has been, very gung-ho about the Veilguard announcement and stuff like that. So I think that they may have also had their hands in it, even though that is the core group of the Mass Effect team that is supposedly working on pre-production right now. So yeah, I do understand why people think that. Obviously, they're going to be separate games, but again, I really hope that this gives people the confidence in BioWare that they can put out, a BioWare title worthy of the name.
I mean, even like Dragon Age 2, it reused a lot of assets, and it was a lot smaller than they expected because it wasn't supposed to be that kind of a game. It was a filler game, according to, I can't remember what his name is now, the main guy that worked on it. But even then, the story to it is just amazing. I absolutely love Dragon Age 2 story, not the ending so much, but the main story of it altogether. Even though they had limited time, limited budget, and limited assets to work with, they can still craft such an engaging story. So after everything that Dragon Age has been through, all the changes from being single player to a multiplayer only game and back to single player, and I still think that the story that they're going to craft around whatever combat gameplay we've got, I still think the story is going to be top notch. I have a lot of faith in that.
Me too.
Tim's waiting for an early copy of the game.
Well, I mean, hopefully we find out, when it's coming out soon. We've got that major reveal on June 11th, 8 a.m. PT on the YouTube channel. More than 15 minutes of gameplay. So hopefully we, learn even more then. It's going to be very interesting to see BioWare moving into their marketing because we haven't really seen them market a game in a while. I mean, Anthem came out in 2018, right? Or no, 19.
I played the beta and then it broke on me. So
Oh, yeah, that's unfortunate.
yeah, it kind of says a lot, really.
The conversation around Anthem is really interesting because I didn't play it. I wasn't around when it launched, so I'm not super familiar with what happened, but it has been really interesting in the last, I want to say year or two, seeing people kind of advocating for more Anthem. I don't know if you guys see that on Twitter too, but I do see a lot of positivity about Anthem lately. And that's not to say it wasn't deserving of the criticism that it got when it launched. But it's kind of been interesting just seeing the conversation change. And the exact same thing is happening with Andromeda, where people are like, oh, Andromeda is not a terrible game. If you just go into it not expecting the trilogy, you're going to enjoy it for a game that it is, And I think that's accurate.
I can understand like the case for Andromeda, of course. I mean, I quite like Andromeda, but Anthem's a confusing one to me. I mean, to me, Anthem's kind of a very different genre to what we expect from BioWare as well. Like it's just a looter shooter, you know. It doesn't have the kind of epic storytelling we expect from BioWare. So it's unusual to me. It's interesting. But it's
Yeah, I
a
mean,
little
personally, I don't want to see BioWare ever focus on a live service game ever. Like, and we know that they're not going to moving forward. They've, specifically stated they're going to be doing single player Mass Effect and Dragon Age games, and that's it. So yeah, I don't want them to ever return to Anthem just because I'm selfish and I don't ever want to see BioWare do the live action or, not focus on Mass Effect and Dragon Age. But yeah, it is going to be interesting to see them market this new game because I don't know if you guys kind of saw that discourse that kind of happened with the Larian. He's like a marketing manager. I can't remember his exact title, but he basically said like marketing is dead. You can't market the way that games have been marketing to people like they have been, and you have to modernize and talk to, gamers like you're also a fan and kind of like approach them on the same level. And, BioWare for the last few years, they post fan art and like happy International Pancake Day. Like, so it's going to be interesting to see them hopefully modernize. And I'm very interested in seeing what their marketing cycle looks like for the Veilguard, because Inquisition's marketing cycle was a year long. And there was like several trailers. There was, several collaborations. I mean, it was huge and long. So yeah, I'm very excited to see what they end up doing for Veilguard because I don't know. So
I think I think part of as well what they're trying to say about marketing as well is that word of mouth can be very powerful. Like you can trust the opinion of your friend more than you can trust, the big corporation that's constantly throwing ads at you on YouTube. Like, and it seems like BioWare is taking a lot more of a personal approach with the marketing, with like you say about doing the gameplay reveal, like on its own, on their own YouTube channel. It's more personal. It's not like them throwing a series of ads on Summer Games Fest, and I don't know what's going to be at Summer Games Fest, and I probably sound like a complete idiot because they'll end up being something anyway. But the fact that they're doing something personal as well on top of that, regardless, like on their own YouTube channel, it makes it more personal to me. Like it's I think it's them trying to get on our level a bit more.
yeah, I agree. It feels like they're trying to approach the current fan base that they know has been waiting. So I think that's a good thing. Oh, also, I know you guys have kind of started talking about Exodus. I don't actually expect anything from these shows. I mean, how are you guys feeling about Exodus so far?
Looking good. Yeah, the whole time dilation has got me very intrigued.
Yeah, I think the whole protagonist thing threw you off though.
The what?
The whole sort of being half human, half not human thing.
Oh, yeah. And then all this stuff that they've been I don't know if you guys have seen that stuff that they've been talking about, the like demons and the silicates, the new concept art that they've been showing. I'm like genuinely obsessed. It sounds like a Dark Urge type of concept.
Yeah, I was thinking that myself. It does seem like a perfect opportunity to throw something like that in there.
Yeah, I really, really hope that we can choose that as the protagonist. So yeah, I really hope that I hope that game is good too. I just want all these companies to succeed and like these devs to succeed. But God, it's rough out there. But I really, really hope that game does well.
I'm sure regardless it'll be a very good game, but yeah, I do hope that people pick it up.
Me too, because I don't feel like anybody's talking about it.
Mm.
Like I'm the type of YouTuber that I watch everybody's videos. Like I'm always watching because I'm working during the day. Like I'm usually like, drawing or something like that. And I'm always listening to like lore videos and, what people are saying about games. And I never see Exodus videos. I think there's mine. And then I've seen you, Atharia, and Mr. Hulfen. You guys have, maybe like one or two videos, but I don't really see it in like a wider, broader sense either, which is kind of a bummer. I really thought that after its trailer, it would kind of take off because I know so many people are waiting for Mass Effect. So it's been really interesting kind of seeing like, I think the Twitter still has like only 10,000 followers. I don't know. It's really interesting. The first novel comes out September 17th, I think.
Yeah.
So hopefully that can generate some more buzz. But I don't expect them at either of the game shows this weekend.
But no, thank you ever so much for taking your time out to come
Yeah.
chat with us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you
It's been a
guys.
pleasure.
And where can people find you?
They can find me on YouTube at Kayla Elizabeth, on Twitter as Kayla Elizabeth, and then I also have my Etsy if people are interested in buying merch. Not like my brand, but like, Dragon Age and Mass Effect merch. And that is Pins by Kayla, I think. on
Fabulous.
Etsy.
We'll put all those in the description as well, so there's easy links for everyone to find those.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Wonderful. Thank you ever so much.
Thank you again, Carla, for joining us. It was a pleasure to chat with you. And as we said before, we will have links to her shop in the description, as well as a link to our Discord if you'd like to join in on the conversation. And if you'd like to follow any of us on X, you can find Carla at Carla Elizabeth on X. You can find me at Craig and his Mac, or you can find Tim at Ploppy54. We do also have a Patreon now, so if you could support us, it would be very much appreciated. We do have an exclusive Exodus episode up at the moment, as well as an uncut conversation with Scott Ryder, aka Tom Taylorson. Simply search the Lazarus Project podcast on Patreon to find us. And if you could leave us a review to support the podcast and let others know that you're enjoying it, that would be very much appreciated. Thank you ever so much, and we will see you in the next episode.